Hello, my name is Gerald Polanco. I'm the Director of Programs at Chicago Community Bond Fund, and I manage the revolving fund team. As Rachel said, I'm going to be providing a little bit of context as to where we are, and part of that is going to how we started. As some of you may know, our origins start with Deshaun Pittman. Deshaun was murdered by Chicago police on August 24th, 2014. There was a vigil that was dedicated to Deshaun and was disrupted by CPD. This led to several arrests, and 5 of the mourners were charged with felonies and were detained in Cook County Jail on nearly $30,000 bond. The family and the community around Deshaun spent 4 months raising that money so that they could be freed. And out of all of that was sort of the understanding, the realization, right, that like no one should have to go through anything like that. The money from that bond became the seed for what would eventually become CCBF, which was launched in November 15th of 2015. Next slide, please. So, what is CCBF's mission? And so as you can see here, CCBF supports individuals whose communities have been impacted by structural violence and whose bonds are completely out of proportion with their ability to pay. We are committed to building long-term relationships and organizing with people most directly impacted by criminalization and policing, people of color, especially Black people and the poor. So if you were to think of CCBF, it kind of falls under these 2 buckets, right? So we have the paying the bond and education and advocacy. The start, like I said, with Deshaun Pittman meant that we started as a revolving fund, right? The idea being that we pay money for someone's bond. At the end of their case, somebody comes back to us and it rotates over and over again so that we can pay for people's freedom. Pay for people's ransom, really. In this, we realized that this would just be an unending cycle. And so soon thereafter, we began to engage in education and advocacy on the harms of pretrial detention, on the abolition of pretrial detention and forms of carceral systems, and the advocacy that led to what we would later talk about in the presentation regarding the PFA and other efforts to eliminate pretrial detention. Next slide, please. So I just want to provide a little bit of context about where we are in and how demanding freedom has changed over time. Historically, or I shouldn't say historically, but when bond funds were started, the idea was to get as many people out free, right? And a lot of that context has changed as we've made progress towards freedom. There have been well-coordinated attacks on dissent and organizing. There are documented strategies by the American Bail Coalition and other right-leaning groups attacking efforts towards the abolition of pretrial detention and people's freedoms, they've connected to attempts to criminalize protest, assembly, and dissent, as well as rollbacks on pretrial freedom. These pretrial attacks are sort of the power of our movement, right? That we've been able to, not just us, CCBF, but the larger work of bond funds across the country and movements against incarceration, that these coordinated attacks have come out. So I kind of want to just sort of pause here to say thank you to all the people who participated in direct actions and advocacy work over the past 7 years and beyond. Many of the people in this call and many of the people who are not in this call, right, have worked tirelessly over the last several years, both locally, statewide, right, and across the country towards advancing people's freedom and the abolition of pretrial detention. Next slide, please. So, as you know, bail funds are facing backlash across the US. We face continued racist, classist rhetoric and fear-mongering from the media, system players who give false solutions to increase surveillance, policing, and state violence instead of community investment, community care, and freedom, right? Particularly when we think about what are all these other systems and programs, right, that the state has created to sort of these reformist reforms to quote unquote make it safer, such as EM, right, electronic monitoring. These are all ways in which they just increase surveillance and state violence. And then I just want to touch a little bit on the Pretrial Fairness Act. Some more may be discussed later in the presentation, but I just to highlight, I know that it's been a topic of conversation, which is that there's a current lawsuit delaying full implementation of portions of the PFA, particularly the sections on money bond. And right now, the way the briefing schedule is set up means that oral arguments on this court case is in March. So it is possible that we will have a ruling from the Illinois Supreme Court in April, and then we will know what the Illinois Supreme Court will decide on how the money bond portion of the Safety Act will be once it's implemented. And I believe that's the end of my slides, and I think I pass that off to Bethany.
Thanks, Gerald. Hi, I'm Bethany Dean. I'm the Operations and Program Associate here at the Bond Fund, which basically just means I work mostly in operations, but I also get to help out and do some things to support people with our revolving fund team. So we wanted to talk a little bit about just things that are going on and just how operations, some things about human resources, but also some fundraising updates. We can go to the next slide, Warren. And you might notice that we're a little bit bigger than we used to be. We added some staff in the last couple years and expanded our team. And we're so grateful that we've been able to do that, because it meant that we increased the number of bonds that we were able to pay. It also increased our capacity to provide post-release support. So when people are released, helping them get resources, but also their loved ones and things that they might be experiencing, and to just make sure that they have what they need so that they can fight their case. And it's also been important so that we could connect with community members like you. A lot of you, like Gerald mentioned, have been involved in our advocacy and have done a lot in our direct action campaigns. And so we're just really grateful that we have so many people, not just on staff, but also people in the community, that we're all in this work together. So appreciate y'all. But yeah, there's some pictures of us at the end of the year event that kicked off our end of year campaign, and us at our staff retreat last year. And then also some newer members of our staff that had not joined some of those things yet. So we can go to the next slide. And now we're going to move over to fundraising updates. And I just talked about our end of year campaign. We set a really lofty goal and we hit it. It was kind of amazing and somewhat unexpected in some ways, because we were like, let's set it. This is money we need to do great work and to do more stuff in 2023. But we weren't quite sure what would happen. And you don't want to set things too low. And it wasn't, yes, we had a couple of large gifts, but most of it was just people in the community showing up like you're doing now, just giving. And it was a lot of small gifts. They add up. And we raised $65,000 in less than a month and a half at the end of the year. That's pretty awesome. So we just wanted to say thank you so much for showing up to the event also, but also just showing up, reading our newsletters, and showing up, buying our merch that we've launched, and giving donations, and for just believing in the work and providing that for people, because it's providing tangible resources to people, and it makes a huge difference. So just thank you very much. And that was our 7th end of year celebration. So we're working towards number 8. We can go to the next slide now. And like I just mentioned, we're going to talk about a little bit more about the fundraising breakdown. Yes, we get grants, and we have foundations that give, and we get some from other community and nonprofit groups like Crossroads and other places. But as you can see, the vast majority of our donations come from individual donors, both people who give monthly, so recurring donations, but also people who just give while there's a big campaign going, or at the end of the year, we see those gifts. But sometimes we'll just see large gifts just pop up for no apparent reason, just and that makes up about 70% almost of our giving. So we just want to point that out. It's there in a visual, because sometimes the numbers, we can talk about that, but it seems kind of, out in the ether a little bit. So we just wanted to give a visual to why y'all are so important, and how people show up, and why, like Gerald just talked about, that we're the national landscape. This is what's happening across the country as well, is that things have, kind of pulled back a little bit from the large things that were happening like in 2020. And it's really important now to make sure that we're still in community together and keeping those things tight knit, because it's keeping places like us going so that the work can continue for however long Money Bond is around in Illinois. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Bethany. Also, shout out to Warren for our slides and tech. Appreciate you. Yeah, we can go back to the graph. Perfect. So just to kind of affirm what Bethany was sharing, obviously, folks who can see on the chart, the 2020 donations and revenue were incredibly high, almost $8 million. And that year really allowed us to free so many people because we were up against such intense state violence. It also allowed the bond fund to scale up, to hire folks, to increase our capacity. And that year, again, as we keep mentioning, for bail and bond funds nationwide, was definitely a huge boost. And then as those funds have also increased their expenses, we have seen our revenue go down. And we also know that that is definitely a part of the just economics in general in our country right now. It's part of the pandemic reality. And we continue to really just feel for folks who email us and they're like, we love you and we just can't support you right now with our current finances. And we completely understand that. We just wanted to be transparent and share with everyone that this is our current reality, and that we are continuing just to figure out what our revenue sources will be in this year to make sure that we can meet those expenses, and make sure to support people's freedom and support our post-release support and continued advocacy. We can go to the next slide. So wrapping up for our operations team, our priorities for this year, we will continue to post bond in 2023. I'll pass to the revolving fund in a moment to hear updates from them. We will keep going with post-release support. And we'll also focus on the continued implementation of the Pretrial Fairness Act. And just shout out, thank you, Kisa, in the chat for just the amazing power of community that happened in 2020, the 7.2 million that came to us during the uprisings between May and August of 2020. So again, just really grateful for this powerful community. And operations will pass it over to the revolving fund, our bond squad. Go ahead, Safar.
Thank you, Rachel. Hey everyone, my name is Zafar Bendukta. I'm one of the legal advocacy coordinators with CCBF. I want to give you some updates on the bond squad, but I also want to say thank you to everyone who's volunteered and supported over the years with time, money, however people have helped. I know I see in the names, I see a lot of our volunteers here, so I just want to say thank you for everything. We appreciate that. You can go to the next slide. So what is the bond squad? What have we been up to? As was said earlier, there's two sides of CCBF. There's the side that is just posting bond, trying to get people out as soon as possible. And there's a side that is focused on advocacy. So we are the side that is posting bond as quickly as we can to try to get people out as soon as we can. You can fill out the slide. So we want to get people out of jail as quick as we can, because that you can't fight a case, you can't advocate for yourself. It's really hard to live life or do much of anything when you don't have your freedom. So we would want to get people out as quick as they can and make it so they are more effectively able to fight their case. We are still going to be posting bond. The PFA did not go into effect in January, as was expected, due to lawsuits by some downstate state's attorneys. So due to that, we have pivoted to posting bond quarterly. We're working with community partners and processing referrals. We are working with the Public Defender's Office, the Cabrini Green Legal Aid, and a lot of other great organizations that are sending people our way. And we are helping people out. And we're quarterly, so our first posting is coming up very soon. So we'll be getting a good amount of people out and freeing them from Cook County Jail. You can go to the next slide. So we set up an informational hotline. This was a project that I assisted with. We have been getting a lot of calls on the hotline with a lot of people it's hard to understand the law in the state of it. So we are just trying to answer any questions we possibly can, trying to help people out, connecting with the resources, connect them with, some people need to find out who their attorney is, when the next court date is. So we've been helping with that a lot. We're also doing some community requests through the hotline. As far as outreach goes, we worked with a law firm and the MacArthur Justice Center, and we sent them some of our data to include in a amicus brief for the Supreme Court supporting the PFA. An amicus brief, for those who don't know, is basically if you have some stake in a case, but you're not a party to it, then you can submit this for the court to consider. So we helped with outreach, and over 400 people signed it, which is fantastic. Everyone from local community members to professors from across the country, to government officials, aldermen. It was incredible. So many people signed it. That was very cool. What's next? So for the end of 2022, we kind of, in anticipation of the law going into effect, we ramped up our posting at the end of the year. So now we know that didn't happen. But in just December, this is a crazy number. In just December, we posted $277,500 in bonds. And from December of 21 to December of 22, we paid over $1.9 million in bonds, and that freed hundreds of people from Cook County Jail. So to give them the opportunity to advocate for themselves and fight their case more effectively. Next slide. There's more. We also have all settled into our new roles during this transitory period. So I'm the legal advocacy coordinator, so I run the hotline, process referrals, intakes, etc. We have a team member who is the protest support coordinator, so they do outreach to people in activist groups and movements and assist with that. We also have another staff member is the legal advocacy and data coordinator, so they track data and coordinate with our community partners. We also have a law clerk, which has been fantastic. And then also post-release support. So we don't just pay the bond and then skip town. You know, we're sticking around. We help people after they get out with whatever they may need, and that could be something as small as I want to shout out Bethany. Bethany dropped off like cleaning supplies to someone the other week. So we don't just we're holistic in our approach to post-release support, and we don't just pay the bond and then forget about you. We're going to keep following up and helping you out in any way that we can. We also, our post-release support coordinator is currently on maternity leave, so congratulations to her. And we have set up a working group with membership from across the spectrum of CCBF to kind of fill that role while they're out on parental leave. Next slide. Oh, that's it. So I will pass on and also shout out Warren for the help with the tech and slides.
Great, thank you so much, Safar. My name is Santera, and I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for CCBF, and I'm a member of the Advocacy team. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so as we keep mentioning throughout this presentation, the attacks on pretrial reform are the direct result of all of the power we've been able to build. Our freedom demands and our campaigns are a huge threat to the status quo that wants to continue to criminalize our communities. These attacks have nothing to do with keeping our communities safe. They're all about maintaining power. And as we've mentioned many times throughout this presentation, in Illinois, we've had our fair share of attacks. As discussed earlier, just this past New Year's Eve, the Illinois Supreme Court issued an order directing counties across our state to delay the implementation of the Pretrial Fairness Act until the court has had a chance to review a Kankakee County decision finding the law unconstitutional. The Attorney General's office has thankfully appealed the judge's order, and this appeal is going directly to the Illinois Supreme Court. It won't need to be heard in an appellate court first, and we're very grateful for that. We mentioned this teach-in before, but the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice, of which we're a member, hosted a really awesome teach-in just this last month that goes into greater detail about the lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the law. It's super thorough, and I definitely recommend checking it out. We can drop that in the chat. But despite the delay in implementation, there are still things that we can do to defend the Pretrial Fairness Act. Right now, we can let our legislators know that we appreciate their continued support for the Pretrial Fairness Act. Just this past election season, we witnessed months of attacks from a multi-million-dollar, mega-funded, law enforcement-led attack campaign against the Pretrial Fairness Act and ending money bond. And despite all of this opposition, the legislator held the line on ending Moneyball, oh my goodness, basketball is on my mind, ending money bond. And we need to show our electeds that we appreciate their continued support and have their backs. And actually right now, we can take a minute, and I'm gonna drop in the chat the link to send a letter. And right now we can take a minute, I'll set a timer. You can fill out all of the information in the chat to send a letter to your elected officials. Letting them know, like, thank you for defending the Pretrial Fairness Act. This makes a huge difference to have people from across the state like swarming their office with letters of support. It lets them know when they have to make hard decisions that there are people that are paying attention, and despite all of the negativity, people want this. So I'm going to stop talking, set the timer for 1 minute, and give folks a second to just complete this. And when you're done, throw up an emoji to show that you have completed. Okay, and go. Okay, that is time. Thank you so much. I saw the emojis come up. I did see questions in the chat about what happens if you put your address in and it didn't go directly to one of your representatives. I'm going to look. Yes, Kisa wrote in the chat that maybe your rep didn't vote. I will look into this and I'll get you that answer for sure. But definitely appreciate. I saw the emojis up. Really, really appreciate the letters coming in. The next thing that we can do is you can join the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice, having a friend bank on March 2nd at 6 p.m. to kind of do what I just did right now, talking to your friends, your comrades about supporting the Pretrial Fairness Act. We'll be getting together from 6 to 7:30 this Thursday, just to get together, to get our friends to send letters of support and really think through what else we can do to support the Pretrial Fairness Act. Also, there's going to be more actions, more things that we'll be doing from now through the summer. Join our newsletter to stay updated about what we'll be doing. That's a really quick place to figure out what different actions we have coming up. And also, finally, like, you can donate as we've mentioned before, even the smallest donation counts and helps support our work across all of the different teams. I'll drop that. We definitely appreciate donations of any and every size. And just thank you so much. And with that, I will pass to Gerald.
Hello, I'm back. And now we're at the end, so Q&A time. Please, anyone, feel free to raise your hands in the little like thing at the bottom where the reactions are. You can raise your hand. You can also unmute yourself or put your question in the chat. And I will work very hard to speak at a slower, more moderated pace. If I miss a question in the chat, someone else in the team, feel free to let me know.